Hello, this is the Self Advocacy Federation podcast.
This is the third podcast in our series, and it is around disability and relationships during the age of COVID.
We hope that you're going to enjoy this. For our first interviews, we will be interviewing Jane and Miss Cupid. They will talk to us about their own lived knowledge on ways to having healthy relationships and boundaries during COVID. Jane, what have you been involved in this past year during COVID that has really helped you maintain your healthy relationships?
I have pioneered my but COVID, my goodness, no.
Who was it that let you know that?
The chef, but I knew.
I don't think you've seen much of anybody for almost a year, hey?
No, my birthday, she my butt, myself.
Jane, what sort of activities do you do with the Cerebral Palsy Alberta or CP group, especially when you have to do them during COVID and online?
I had to put Saturday all day available for me. Yeah, play games.
What sort of game?
Trevor, yeah.
Hey, was it kind of set up like Jeopardy?
Yeah.
So how many of the questions were you able to answer right?
Oh, I'll go. Can I say keep?
What other type of things do you do during the week, Jane?
Music, yeah.
So how many people do you play with?
50 people.
What do you play?
It's just.
Miss Cupid, what have you been involved in this past year during COVID that has helped you maintain your healthy relationships?
Sometimes when I'm on Zoom, people don't have the captioning right. They don't even bother to ask about things like my hearing delay, especially when I'm going into government meetings without the SCF. I often end up having to forego accommodations. What I have to do is I have to tell them what I need, which is to ask about things like everybody will need to mute so that there's no background noise in between. I can only focus on one screen. Usually I have the iPad active speaker mode, but if someone else makes a noise and forgets to turn off their mic, it's a mess. And because I am staring at that person's face without the closed captions.
When you're approaching those groups and whatnot, do you think that we should be setting it as a principle to have options like closed captioning as the ground rule, especially if it's a major meeting?
I would hope for that, especially if it's the government. A lot of things are actually done over the phone too, and that's even more difficult.
What do you do when it comes to a situation where you can't avoid and it has to be done over the phone?
I usually have to make the call. For instance, I have to book some of my swims at the rec center over the summer, and I couldn't avoid booking those over the phone. The website for me was just a piece of garbage. It didn't work.
Just out of curiosity, because I've never had to use use the tool. I know that for certain government phone numbers, they have I think it's called the TTY. Do you find that helpful when it's an option?
It's like texting each other, except it's live. When you text each other normally, the other person does not have to be there, they can answer later. When I'm using the TTY, we're both there, and usually I ask the questions, which is to ask about things like in a regular phone, comes over the converter, see it on my screen, text my response, and then convert it back to voice. I used to use it a lot. It is an old technology, and it is unfortunately going out of style without anything to replace it. If I have to use the phone, 90% likely to get my grandma to do it. It's more difficult. I'm adding another person, and sometimes when I have to phone the dad's office because I can't get my dad any other way, they took the website away. They don't have a TTY system. Well, they do, but they don't answer it. They took all that down in April. As a result, my grandma ends up doing all my bookings, and when they have to ask questions, they end up literally asking questions to the wrong person. They think that asking my grandma is good enough. What my help is when they have to ask questions, you need to ask. My grandma does not know that. That's the disabled adult transit system. I've been on the advisory committee. There were more meetings before, but ever since COVID, there have not been that many meetings. I felt as I had more of a voice on that committee before COVID. Since COVID, the meetings over Google, we met 6 times over Google. Before that would be at the Pierceman's Garage once a month. But the dad's office kind of take authority over the whole meeting. I have to raise my hand to talk. Basically what happens in the meeting is they present what they're going to do. They kind of do a consultation, but they are going into this consultation with already having an agenda of doing what they were going to do anyway, so it's kind of like, I call it pseudo consultation. I feel I can't get, why am I sitting here? I don't have a voice. You guys just putting down the policy and not even ask us. You need to ask us. I say needs modification because we get problems where they're asking the wrong people the wrong questions. For instance, this happens often in the winter, and why I don't like the cancellation policy is that often in the winter, that bites off more than they can chew. In other words, they try to do more work than they can handle. As a result, some people get left behind. Now, I try to use ETS when I can, but there are sometimes when I can't, and that's when that comes in.